Hey there, nerds. We are back with another edition of Two Nerdy Dads. With me, as always, is Jason Applegate. Say hey, Jason.
Hey guys, what's up?
Now, it's been a while, and a
Yes.
lot has happened. Specifically, in this week alone, a lot has happened. What do you think, Jason? What's going on?
Oh my gosh. Well, two huge trailers came out just in the last 2 days. One was leaked, and then I think they officially released it since it was leaked anyway. But let's talk about the one that officially came out, and is right up your alley, but just as excited about it. Star Wars. What did you think of that trailer?
Let me start by saying that I am in Las Vegas, and I have no idea why, how, what happened. I think um, a Sith waved his hand and said, "Don't worry about Star Wars Celebration. You don't need to go." It's like, why am I not there?
Oh
I'm
my
like
goodness.
very close. Why didn't I go? I don't know. I'm an idiot. I'm very unhappy with myself because yesterday I sat and watched it, and
Mm-hmm.
it was awesome. The BB-8 droid coming
Mm-hmm.
on stage, like an actual working droid.
Wow.
I was
Wow,
like,
I didn't see that stuff. That's cool.
oh, it was amazing. I think they still have it on StarWars.com or on their YouTube channel where you can go and watch the opening introduction panel with J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy, and some dude from Entertainment Weekly was hosting it who had a haircut like Beverly Hills 90210. I'm like, dude,
Nice. Is that making a comeback now?
I was like, I love the 90s just like anybody else, but what? Anywho,
Is that is that what inspired you to post all those pictures from when we were in high school?
I was in the office. I was like, oh my God, I'd forgotten about these. We look
Those
awesome.
were great. Those were great because I mean, those weren't like digitally. You had to find the paper copies of those pictures, like back in the day when we had paper copies of pictures and they weren't just digitally stored on our devices.
Well, that's what happened. I found the paper copies and I took a picture with my phone, and that's how they went online. I'm like, I'm not scanning these. I'm too lazy. So,
That's awesome, though.
but back to the trailer with Star
Yeah.
Wars. Wow. So I can't remember if it was J.J. Abrams or Kathleen Kennedy that introduced it and said, "Here's more footage," and I wasn't sure what they were going to show. I didn't know if it would be like, "Hey, here's an extra second from the one we already showed you." No, all new footage. It was just amazing. That opening shot to me rivals, and this is the opening shot in the trailer, rivals
Hmm.
the opening shot in A New Hope, where the Star Destroyer just comes over the camera, and you're like,
Yeah.
this is huge. Where that skiff or whatever it is, speed bike is going across the desert, and then you see the little X-wing crashed there in the
Hmm.
desert, and then you realize those aren't mountains in the background. That is a huge Star Destroyer that is
Hmm.
destroyed and wrecked. I was like, oh, oh, and
Yeah, I
it's
like the parallel. I like the parallel that you drew between the A New Hope, Star Destroyer coming across, and it was that same kind of effect. And I like the tone that it set for the idea that the Empire's in shambles, but it's still there, and still affecting, the galaxy, if you will. So, definitely excited about that. I have to say that my favorite part, even though I had seen it spoiled in an image that you clicked on to watch the video, was the very, very end. Just seeing um, Han Solo and Chewie and seeing Harrison Ford and hearing his voice. Because you hear his voice before you see him, don't you? I have to watch it again.
I think you're right.
If you don't, then it was as though I did. It was like it was that sort of a feel where it was just like childhood. And then you see him and you're like, man, my son watched it and he's like, Dad, Han Solo's old. Because he doesn't really have a concept of,
Yeah.
of the time of the Star Wars because it exists for him now. And so to see Han Solo that old doesn't make sense to him.
That's
For example, we've been watching the 1960s Batman shows, and I'll get to that later, but he doesn't realize, how long ago that was. So it's kind of funny, you know, to envision that. For us, I think they nailed it with the nostalgia factor, and drawing upon that. It was cool.
Yeah, to be honest, the only thing I didn't like is they wasted like 5 seconds telling us this Christmas. It's like, are you kidding me? Somebody might not know that Star Wars is coming out this Christmas. Don't waste time on that graphic. Give me more. Give me more.
That's cool.
I love I love the scene in the TIE fighter wing where something is going wrong because there's TIE fighters blowing up. Clearly a little battle in there, and I'm like, man, that's interesting because, like you said, it's like the Empire is in shambles, but they still have obviously a strong force. But it's almost like, is there somebody on the inside trying to mess things up? What's going on?
Well, remember, we've seen that the African American or the black character, I don't know if he's American or if he's British, but you know, take off the stormtrooper helmet. So my theory, and I haven't read anything, I know there's stuff out there that people are speculating and stuff like that, but my theory is that maybe he's a defecting a stormtrooper, that he's defecting from it, and he's flying, you know, that's how he gets away. You know, possibly. The other thing that I thought was cool was, and maybe you know what kind of stormtrooper that guy was, but that like dark gray or silver stormtrooper guy that was walking down the hallway in that short clip looked like he was you know, a BA stormtrooper, like he was there for a mission. And I was sort of wondering, is he like hunting down the defector or something like that? Is he some sort of like super stormtrooper or something? I don't know. I thought he was cool.
Interesting. And I ran into this when the prequels came out. Say what you will about the prequels, but I know a lot about Star Wars and have known a lot about Star Wars for a long time. But with new movies coming out, I don't know. I have no clue. So I'm no longer an expert in Star Wars.
Well, it doesn't help that they, you know, took a lot of stuff that we thought was canon and tossed it out, which is fine because I think that gives you more room for creativity. But there's no like real reference point, which is kind of cool because it's fun to guess at things. The other part I really liked was when the Millennium Falcon's flying through, you know, a crashed Star Destroyer, maybe the same one. That was really kind of fun to see. And the robot hand, Luke Skywalker's robot hand, like straight up hardcore metal hand as he touches, you know, R2, I thought was cool. And what they didn't show was cool. You know, not showing Luke's face, not showing Leia, you know, just seeing her hand. And I felt like they just showed enough. You bring up the prequels though, and so I'm gonna be that guy and kind of throw some cold water on this and say, do you remember when episode 1 trailers came out and how excited we were about Darth Maul and the rest, you know? But I think the big difference is I really like Abrams. I think he's gonna do a solid job. I like I didn't watch it, but what I heard that he said was that he was tentative and at first said no to taking on Star Wars because it was too big. He felt like it was too much of a responsibility. And I liked hearing that because I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
pretty cool to hear.
It was funny because when he said it, and this is what he talked at the Star Wars celebration, he's like, yeah, so Kathleen approached me and asked me to do Star Wars, and I said no because I had a plan for my future and where I wanted my career to go, and my family and we were doing something the next year anyway. And I'm like, you had a vacation that you couldn't cancel for Star Wars? But think about
hey,
how
family.
huge it was. It's like, yeah, you can't just say yes to Star Wars without trepidation. I mean, the fact that he was nervous means he had that much understanding of what Star Wars is, and he want to just take it on willy-nilly.
Yeah, I think that's key too. So cool. Well, the other preview then is the Batman versus Superman trailer that was at first leaked, I guess, and then officially released. And I've only seen it once, believe it or not. Because I heard that it was leaked, didn't get a chance to see it, and then was looking at it, you know, after school because I couldn't look at it during work. So I don't know.
Now, which
Like,
did you see? Did you see the version with the subtitles on the bottom because it was shown in some Mexican or Spanish theater, or did you see
no.
the clean one that's good?
I saw the English version one. It's the one that has the statue of Superman that says
Okay,
"False
so
God" on
but
it.
it was crisp and clean. It wasn't out of focus. It wasn't like tilted or anything. It
Mm-mm.
was a good one.
No, no. So is it legit?
Yes, it's legit. The one that was leaked was, I'm assuming, from some kind of camera phone, and it was sort of at an angle, a little bit at an angle, and they had subtitles on the bottom that were in Spanish, and there was I want to say there was one scene that kind of got a little blurry, and then it came back into focus, and the audio wasn't great. So then, from what I'm understanding, Warner Brothers was like, "Oh man, we got to do this," because they were supposed to release it, I think, on Monday in IMAX theaters to certain crowds, and then this got leaked, and it was like, we can't have this out there because this looks awful. So they came
Right.
back today and released the quality version. So I wanted to make sure you saw the good version at least, so you know. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I did. And you know what? If I was like a, you know, a publicity guy or something like that, I swear I would just have someone leak something out and then just follow it, because I feel like they get so much more exposure when something gets leaked and then they officially release it than they ever would if they just released it in the theaters, you know, because they all clamor, you know, for it.
Well,
So I don't know.
that's the problem with this one, though, and I think
Yeah.
that's why Warner Brothers was really upset, is it got released hours after Star Wars. So nobody's talking about Batman, even though Batman Superman is
Oh,
a huge movie. Nobody's
right.
talking about it because everybody's talking about Star Wars.
Yeah, that could be it. So, to the preview, like nothing surprised me about the concept. I want to watch it again because I haven't really, you know, sat down and really looked at it. The only aspect of it that really sort of excited me is that small clip where it looks like he's in the suit from Dark Knight Returns, where he's in that heavy, you know, battle suit, because he's got a lot of armor and his eyes are lit up, you
Yeah.
know, like he's plugged into the city, which was just classic. If you don't know The Dark Knight Returns, you've got to read that graphic novel if you're any kind of a Batman fan at all,
Well,
especially now that this movie's coming out.
it's an animation as well now.
Yeah, that's true too. And the animation's not too bad. It does it pretty well. It does it justice, I feel.
Now,
But
does it do it Dawn of Justice or does it Real Justice?
well played, sir. Well played. But as far as the rest of it, it just was sort of like okay, that's what I kind of thought this plot was going to be. You know, and I'm excited that that's what it is. But I don't know. And I guess it didn't help that the only feedback I got, because I went on Twitter to see what people were saying about it, was a lot of negativity. Was a lot of people saying like, "Oh, you know, that looks stupid," and blah blah blah. And so maybe I'm just sort of reacting from that, and I haven't seen many people say anything that was that great. But even before I was affected by the feedback by other people's opinions, it wasn't the same reaction I had with Star Wars. And you know me, I'm a huge Batman fan. I mean, I love Star Wars too, but Batman's my thing. And so I didn't have that same like, oh, you know, reaction. And maybe it's because I don't know. I can't answer that. I don't know if I'm just not excited about Snyder or I'm not excited about Batman fighting Superman for an entire movie, like, and that's all they kind of showed, was that was the major concept. They haven't really shown anything else with regards to that. I couldn't tell whose voice. Do you know whose voiceover it was? Like, who was that Lex Luthor or who was that?
Yeah, I think that was Jesse. Well, there was a little bit of Jesse Eisenberg in there.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember who else I heard. Maybe a little bit of Jeremy Irons, who's Alfred.
That is who it was. It was Jeremy Irons. Yeah.
Now, like you said, this is your world. Like Star Wars is more mine. This is your world. Totally understand. You would know more about this. I've read the Dark Knight Returns comic a long time ago, so it's been a while. I need to obviously go back in my collection and find it and reread it. I felt watching the trailer that it was like the worst parts of Zack Snyder. And I'm a huge fan of Zack Snyder when it comes to Dawn of the Dead. I think he did fantastic with The Watchmen. I am ostracized nonstop because I don't like the comic book Watchmen, but I love the movies Watchmen. I know we've talked about that before, but I love the movie. I love what he did with it. I love his style. I thought Man of Steel was really good, but there were things in Man of Steel that I did not like. And I feel like those elements of Zack Snyder is all we saw in the trailer, and I didn't like it. I don't like the storyline they're showing that we're going to have a whole movie of two good guys fighting each other. It's like bad guys. That's what makes comic books interesting. They're the bad guys. And yes, I know the Dark Knight Returns, but I actually saw elements of, like, it reminded me of Red Sun, where the way they were worshiping Superman as this hero to the nation. And I'm like, I get it. I understand. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't understand how this leads to Dawn of Justice. Not to mention the fact, I mean, I should say the Dawn of the Justice League. And I should say that I don't understand the timeline. It's like, okay, what was he doing between Man of Steel and now in this new movie? And why is it taking so long? Because Batman, we already know from leaks and all that Batman's sort of been there for a long time. It's like, okay, so what's in this long period of time between that? Why don't we have a story with that? Because I think that would be.
Yeah, I guess what I'm hoping for is that they've only shown us that one part of the storyline. You know, I kind of hope that everything that we saw with regards to, you know, Batman fighting Superman and that being the main conflict is over in Act 2, you know, of the film. And so then Act 3 becomes them shifting it, because the great thing about Dark Knight Returns is the finale was him fighting Superman, sure, but it wasn't a Batman versus Superman story. Like, it wasn't the whole. If that was the whole story, it would have just gotten old. You know, it was more about him. You know, it was a re-origin story. You know, retelling how what would it take for Batman to come out of retirement, and what would he be like if that was the case? You know,
it was 100% Batman's story. That's why
it was.
The Returns. There wasn't Superman in it. It was The Dark Knight Returns.
Right.
Through this trailer, I almost thought we were going to see that Robin, and I'm like, I really don't want to see that Robin in this world. That just would ruin it for me, because that's not the dawn. That's not the beginning of the Justice League to me.
Yeah. So that's, I guess, what I'm holding out hope for is that, you know, this is, you know, just acts 1 and 2 maybe, and then Act 3 is nothing but them. You know, they deck it out, you know, like the cliche of, you know, the two heroes that meet each other and fight it out, and then come to an understanding that no, they have this common foe that they're going to, you know, then join forces to fight against, and I hope that's the case. I did like the bat suit.
Yeah,
you know, yeah, that looked cool, and you know, I mean, Zack Snyder is okay. I disagree with you about Watchmen a little bit. I don't think I didn't hate on the film as much as some people hated on the film, but that, you know, there were aspects of it that I wasn't a huge fan of. What I like to do is sometimes, and I think it helps us as people who are real fans, is to get somebody that you know and you respect their opinion on things, that has zero prior knowledge, zero field of experience, and have them sit down and watch it and tell you their perspective of things. And I think that's what shifted me with Watchmen more towards the middle, and I'm talking about the Snyder movie, was that I got an opinion from somebody who had not ever read the comic, knew enough about comics, has seen comic book movies and read a little bit, and their opinion, that person's opinion, you know, affected mine and made me realize, like, oh yeah, that's where, you know, that's what I didn't like about it. And it wasn't just me thinking that the you know, the comic book is better, because that's almost not fair comparing two different types of media. You know, it's like people who are fans of the Harry Potter books. You know, the movie's never going to live up to it. You just hope that it does it some justice. So, you know, that's what I kind of think about this. And I guess with regards to the preview, where am I hopeful? I think Ben Affleck looked like he was okay as Batman. I think I can live with that. I liked seeing the bat suit. It looked like, with the fact that it was like encased, you know, and he was staring at the cowl, kind of seems to draw upon the idea that he's going to bring it out of retirement, like he hasn't been Batman for a little while. And then, like I said, that one shot of the armored suit with the light up eyes and Superman's floating up in the sky and Batman, you know, I don't even remember what he says to him because, like I said, I only saw it once. But basically, you know, issues. Oh, he says, "Do you bleed?" We're gonna find out. You know, that was kind of like, ooh, ooh. You know, I want to see that epic punch. You know, that, like, just go search Frank Miller Batman versus Superman, and you'll see that epic punch of Batman with the mechanical suit. You know, dealing a very, you know, 80s hair Superman falling to the ground. And it's so cool. And what I think what people forget, though, about that story is that Batman got help from one, a nuclear missile that Superman disarms, two, a one-armed Green Arrow, which love that little bit of a storyline, who hits him with some kryptonite.
Yeah, I forgot about
Then
that.
he puts on the suit and beats up Superman. You know, so everybody... What's that?
Wasn't Wonder Woman in there too?
No, that's the terrible, terrible sequel that Miller wrote. That was DK2. That is just sloppy, I think is the best word to describe that. Like, there's elements of it that are cool and some ideas that are neat, but the execution was sloppy, and you could just tell he just needed a paycheck, I think. But I lost a lot of respect for... I'm not a huge Frank Miller fan post Dark Knight anyway. I'm not even a Sin City fan. I know a lot of people are, but it's just not my thing.
I'm with you. I'm not. Well, if we can, you want to talk about a different Frank Miller property?
Sure, let's do it. Go for it.
Daredevil?
Yeah. Well, I was hoping we would get to that too, and I wasn't thinking of it in reference to the Frank Miller, but you're right. I mean, he wrote some really, really good storylines for Daredevil, and really did for Daredevil what they did for Batman. And the reason I'm leaning forward out of the camera here is that I posted this. So I know you saw it, but you know, one of the I scored at the comic book store. Yeah, right. You know, this is a Frank, and you could just tell from just the artwork that this is a Frank Miller Daredevil. Now I haven't had a chance to read it. But you know, he made Daredevil really edgy. And if you liked the Netflix series, really, I haven't read a lot of Daredevil, but I know for a fact you have to owe some of that to Miller. But you also have to owe some of that to Michael Bendis too, from the limited amount of what I have read and what people are saying out there too. Even though he had nothing to do with writing for the series, whereas I think Jeff Loeb did a lot of. I saw his name on one of the episodes,
which kind of made me nervous, but it worked out well. But yeah, Frank Miller, before he did anything with Batman or really anybody else, he cut his teeth on Daredevil, and Daredevil was basically a dead character at that time. Not dead like in the comic books, but just nobody cared. I mean, if you really break down Daredevil, who cares? He's really a minor character. But Frank Miller took that minor character and just made him so popular. I can't remember the name of the storyline he had, but it was against the Kingpin, and basically the Kingpin exposed Matthew Murdock for everything he was, meaning he outed him as Daredevil, took away everything he had, took away Karen Page. I mean, it was just some great storytelling. Brought in Elektra at that time. Not saying he created Elektra, but Elektra was in the storyline. And it was just phenomenal stuff. And what I thought what was interesting was in the Daredevil, the Netflix version, I kind of felt like they went the route of another Frank Miller property, Batman Year One, but made it Daredevil Year One, and even more so, Wilson Fisk Year One. I really liked what they did with Wilson Fisk. And I'm not usually the guy that's like, show me the villain, show me the history. It's like, no, I want my bad guys to be bad guys. I don't need to know their history, a la Darth Vader. I don't want to see Anakin because now he's not as bad. He's just a kid that turns bad. But what they did with Wilson Fisk, who's eventually Kingpin, I really enjoyed that. Have you seen all the episodes now?
Yes, I did get to watch all of the episodes. I will agree with you on the story because I liked getting a backstory with Fisk and explaining, you know, how he became who he is and where his issues were and things like that. And they made him pretty awful. I mean, when he takes that car door,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
you know, spoiler if you haven't watched these, you know, but by now, like, come on, like if I've had time to watch these, with how busy that we've been, we haven't even done a podcast in like 3 months at least. Um, you know, like you should have seen these by now. But anyway, yeah, it's you know, with the car door and he slams it so many times that he decapitates that guy. You're just like, whoa. And then they fill in the backstory so you see, you know, why is he, you know, sort of this way. I have to say though, and I don't know if it's just me, but I was not a huge fan of D'Onofrio's performance at a lot of times. His voice work bothered me, I think, more than anything. I felt like he had too much of a Batman voice, you know, where he goes down deep and is talking like this. And a lot of times there was a lot of staccato, and he would really take his time to deliver the sentences, almost like William Shatner might have done. And it lost some the it made it unnatural to me because I felt like he did it too much, and he didn't and it didn't match the kid that they portrayed. And so I wanted to see more vulnerability from him as an adult. I felt like if they wanted us to sort of understand how he was, and I don't want to use the word sympathize, but make him a relatable character in that you can understand that he's not just a monster, that he is a human being that is just a messed up one, you know, one that's severely psychologically disturbed. They laid some groundwork with the backstory, but then as the adult Kingpin, I just felt like they didn't show a whole lot of vulnerability. I mean, he wakes up from these nightmares and makes himself a fancy omelet, and I'm just sort of like, okay, like I don't really, I just didn't get it. I didn't buy into it. And I also didn't buy into the relationship. I don't know what they were trying to sell there. I just was like, I don't care about this woman. I don't buy that that any sort of woman who actually had self-esteem and they try, it seemed like they were trying to portray this woman as being very empowered and very sort of like she makes her choices and isn't afraid, and she's a strong character. But why would she, I just didn't buy why she would be with this guy. Like, what is it about him that made him appealing in any manner whatsoever? I didn't see anything. I don't
I
know.
took it a different way. I thought the mannerisms of Vincent D'Onofrio, and I will say there were a couple times where it totally reminded me of Edgar in Men in Black, where a mannerism here, I was like, oh, he's a bug in Men in Black.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I felt like he was stoic and chopped speeches like that because he was constantly on the verge of rage ever since he beat his dad to death. Again, spoiler,
Okay.
tough luck.
Yeah.
But he's constantly on the edge of rage, and we see that with the Russian. I mean, the Russian really didn't. In fact, if I remember correctly, the Russians went there to propose a deal, and he was pissed off because they interrupted a dinner and sort of embarrassed him. So he just raged, and it's like that's not really the reason to rage, but in Kingpin's mind, that's worthy of the rage. So he's kind of always on the edge of trying to keep himself in control, not raging out. And I think we see that interaction a lot with the other heads of the families, for lack of a better description. I don't remember their exact names, but I know we have the Japanese woman, the Chinese man, the Russians, and then the warden of Shawshank Redemption.
Right. Yeah, right. It was great to see him, wasn't it?
This guy it was, but he's constantly trying to keep himself in control as the show went on and told more of the story. Because at first he's just one of them, but then kind of through nobody's fault, but it's happening. He's getting more and more control, and then it clearly becomes a plan. And he obviously wants to be done with all these people, but he's got to let this plan develop. But that's not really him because he's got all these emotions and rages is constantly keeping in control. And I thought that was great how they showed that with the painting, how he sort of finds this zen. Why, I don't know, but the zen with the painting that reminds him of his apartment wall growing up, and then his cell at the very end. I thought that was really cool, and I
Yeah.
liked how that kept him sort of centered. And then with the woman, I felt like that was Fisk's sort of last chance at humanity. Like, I don't, he sees something in this woman that he can try and have a normal life, because basically once he meets her, his name gets out, she convinces him to become public and portray this idea that he's going to save the city, and she's his last gasp at redemption. And when that's taken away, who knows what's going to happen? And then we see that a little bit when she got poisoned, and the idea that she might be taken away. Why she's with him, I kind of felt like she was sort of a thrill seeker. Some of the stories she told, and he is something that's different and new and mysterious, and that's why she's with him. And then the more she's with him, I think that shows us almost like a foil that he does have humanity. He is interesting. I do want to be with him. And we see that from her point of view. And I can understand if that didn't necessarily come across, because I could totally be creating that. I think one of the things I was disappointed in the show is we have 13 episodes, and I wanted more. I wanted more. And now, unfortunately, we get less Daredevil. We'll have Jessica Jones, Luke Cage. I don't remember who the fourth one is. And then the Defenders. It's like, wait a minute, I want more Daredevil story. Let's do that. What I thought was kind of weird, I didn't think Foggy Nelson was necessarily Foggy from the comics. To me, Foggy's always a goofball doofus. I didn't necessarily get the sense that he was in the show. Didn't bother me, the reinvention of him. It just, I didn't think it was the same. And the same to go with Karen Page. Karen Page was always Matt Murdock's girlfriend, as far as I remember, was always his girlfriend. She was once a prostitute, druggie, and they kind of alluded to something in her past. But she was also a radio personality, so her being a secretary, almost private investigator with the team, was sort of new to me. It was a different angle, which I didn't necessarily dislike. It was just different.
It was Lois Lane a little bit, though, wasn't it? Like, there was a lot of that. You know, and I don't know as much about the Daredevil history as you do, because you've read more Daredevil than I have. And so I didn't even know Karen Page by name. Like, I knew Ben Urich from Spider-Man. And I loved his character. Actually, in the entire series of all the characters, he was my favorite. And I was really mad when, spoiler, he was killed. I was like it was Game of Thrones upset for me.
That was messed up. I did not see that coming at all, because as far as I know there's been tons of reboots, but as far as I know, that's not happened in the comics. So I was like, holy wow, that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah, and it was Game of Thrones upsetting for me, but it was also Game of Thrones fitting. Like, you know, it was the right time to have that character die. Because I think they had run it, you know, he had run his course, but he was my favorite character in the entire series. Karen Page, I sort of liked. I thought she was fine. I thought the actress did a good job with the character. Foggy bugged the crap out of me in the first 2 episodes. I don't know what it was about him, but I don't know if it was a stupid haircut that bothered me or what, but something was just driving me nuts about that guy. And then by about maybe episode 6 or so, like not quite halfway through, I was like, okay, I think it was about the time that he and Karen were flirting, and I was kind of wondering, like, wait, they were setting this up as a Daredevil girlfriend, but she's kind of fallen for Foggy, and Foggy definitely has fallen for her. So what's going on? And then and I sort of started to like him then, and then they brought in the ditzy blonde, corrupt lawyer ex-girlfriend, and then I was like, okay, I'm not buying this anymore. Like, I just don't. And what her. The redemption of her is not being as superficial as you thought. And I just was sort of like, That was another part I just didn't buy. There were things about it I didn't buy. I didn't buy the Kingpin stuff like you were talking about. And I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just me still sort of being irked by the voice work because of how over the top Christian Bale did it in the Batman movies. I don't know. Maybe that's where it's coming from, or if it was that I just didn't particularly care for the female character. Like I wasn't invested in her at all, and just didn't get her. I just didn't get her, and wasn't a fan.
Well, I mean, you bring up good points. The other thing that bothered me was this is, yeah, I saw this as year one. This is his sort of becoming Daredevil. That we showed Stick in one episode. When they announced Scott Glenn as Stick, I'm like, awesome.
Yeah,
Stick is going to be amazing. He's going to train him. And then we get one episode. I was floored that that's all we got.
Yeah, but I didn't want to see a whole like I didn't want them to drag it out like they did with Arrow, which I haven't seen tons of. But the whole island thing, I felt like in whatever season I was watching, I was like, yeah, okay, I got it. Like, can he just be Green Arrow now, and let's stop going back to the island and showing me how he, became who he is now, because I'm really getting tired of the backstory. So I kind of liked that they kept it succinct. I do like that I think he might be back. That's what I'm kind of hoping for.
He's definitely back, because there's at the time I wasn't a big fan, and I think Bendis might have been involved in this with Shadowland, Daredevil Shadowland. Mm-hmm. It was an okay story at the time. It's grown on me. It really took all these minor characters, and I hate to call them minor, but it was Jessica Jones, it was Luke Cage, it was Iron Fist, Ghost Rider, and dealt with Hell's Kitchen, but it was Daredevil was ruling over the Foot, and I can't remember if Stick was in it or not, but that's what they're alluding to, is the secret organization that Stick is working for, that Matt Murdock inadvertently works for, doesn't know he works for. He's kind of already tied to it, and that maybe that's what the Defenders are going to go up against.
Yeah, did you think that the Japanese guy who was in the ninja costume, was he not the Hand? Because he was in red, and from the Wolverine comics, which is where I know the Hand from, and I think they're in the Daredevil comics too.
That's what I meant. The Hand, yes.
You were thinking of Ninja Turtles, aren't the Ninja
Turtles?
I
was like, even when I said, I'm like, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, the Hand is the red. So that was exciting to me. I loved seeing the Hand. I was like, oh, that dude's a ninja from the Hand. That's pretty cool.
And that's what was reporting back to about killing the child, who referenced, is that an Inhuman? And I'm like, I don't know enough about the Inhumans to say really know.
I don't either. And there's been, like, you can probably spend about 7 hours on the internet looking up all the Easter eggs that are in the Daredevil stuff. And I kind of almost don't want to, because I kind of want things to be revealed, to me through this medium without having that, those little kind of nuggets in there. But loved how it referenced and tied it into the cinematic universe, with the New York and the invasion, and even I think there was a Captain America joke here and there and stuff like that. I guess the one question that I have, maybe to wrap this up, is and I liked the actor who played Daredevil. He was good. The suit in the end. What are your thoughts on that?
I was disappointed. I mean, first off, if we're gonna do it, you got to start with the yellow and black. I mean, that's what it was. Okay, if you don't want to go there, totally understand, because one of the things I loved about this was the father-son relationship they built, and his dad with the boxing outfit, the robe, and it was red, and he's just taking it to the next level with himself. Okay, I get it. Cool. But in actual execution, I was like, ugh, that doesn't look good. That looks weird. He looked better as I saw somebody reference Dread Pirate Roberts. He looked way better as Dread Pirate Roberts than he did as the red Daredevil costume.
Well, was it just me, or did it remind you of the 90s body armor one more?
Yes.
That it did the actual red one, even though it had more red in it than that black and red body armor one, but just the way that it was on him reminded me of that. And I suppose it sort of made sense as the fact that it was, there to help protect him, which kind of was the biggest suspension of disbelief, was like, how is this guy not already, dead if he hasn't gone to the hospital at all? He's just getting stitched up by some nurse. But anyway, so it made sense maybe story-wise, but it certainly didn't look very aesthetic. I kind of hope that they they come back and do a Dark Knight Return or a Dark Knight thing where they take the costume and just tweak it a little bit here and there and make it a little sleeker and not quite so, yeah, kind of bulky, I guess, and armor looking.
I agree. I agree.
Well, they referenced that fabric that that the Kingpin was wearing, and it was just made out of it, like lined the suit. And so I really thought, well, that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna make this like super, fabric that he wears, and it can still be that sort of like skin tight, not body armor Kevlar looking thing. And then they just didn't. They just went with the Kevlar look instead.
Yeah, like you said, it's total 90s. I mean, I'm a big fan of 90s, but not in that respect. But,
Yeah.
I want to give one more shout out to that.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the relationship to the priest and Murdoch and how they had conversations. And I want to give a shout out to Medina's own Tony Isabella, who wrote for Marvel and DC, but Marvel back in the day. And from what I understand, he was one of the originals that really put a focus on Matthew Murdoch and him being Catholic.
Yeah, which is a huge part of his character, I think, now. So I agree with that 100%. Was super glad that the Catholicism was brought into it, and I thought that was great too. I agree with that.
It's just a great mix. How they didn't really call him Daredevil until very late, so it was the devil.
Mm-hmm.
So his talk of being the devil and Catholicism, mm-hmm. which is obviously huge, I really, really enjoyed that. And I'm not a big organized religion guy, so I really enjoyed how they brought that into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So, but I think overall it's a thumbs up for me. I was excited about it. I hope the other Netflix series are just as good. I'm excited about Jessica Jones. I don't know much about her as a character. It's one of those that's always been on my list of stuff to read. And I'm excited about Luke Cage too. I'm really excited about that. Series. Is it him and Iron Fist? Is it the Heroes for Hire storyline, or is it just Cage?
I can't remember if it was going to be 4 individual stories leading up to Defender, or if it was 3 and Defenders was the 4th. I don't remember. But Iron Fist. How can you not be in there with Luke Cage somewhere? I don't know.
Yeah, I would imagine. I don't know either. I haven't kept tabs on that as much as I would like to. So, and Marvel seems to be announcing things left and right that it's been kind of crazy.
Well, speaking of characters that I don't know much about. And it's hard to believe this was just Monday. They released another longer full version of Ant-Man trailer. Did you get a chance to see it?
I did not get a chance to see that, I don't think.
It was pretty impressive. And again, I don't know. When we were collecting comics in the 90s, I was an X-Men dude. I did not pay attention to the Avengers. I don't know anything about the Avengers other than what I've really seen in the movies and when they do crossovers. So I really don't know anything about Ant-Man other than he can shrink. This trailer with Paul Rudd and Michael Douglas had a beautiful mix of humor and action. They show the Yellow Jacket, which was really cool as the villain. And to sum it up, they had this great scene where I think it was Ant-Man was on a train and it's bearing down on Yellow Jacket and it's really getting tense, action everywhere. And they cut away and they show that it's a Thomas the Tank Engine train set, and it's like, this is just goofy as all get out.
Yeah,
but it was just beautiful the way they did it. You have to go check it out. I
will have to check that out. Well, you have to. I think if you do Iron Man, Ant-Man, you have to implement the humor into it, or it's just going to be, another Daredevil, the Ben Affleck Daredevil.
The Scott Lang character is very important versus having Hank Pym be Ant-Man in this, and then have Paul Rudd as Scott Lang. I think he can pull that off.
Yeah, I think that made sense. That was a nice choice to go with. I only know a little bit more about Ant-Man because in the late 80s, I would pick up a couple Avengers books here and there. And so I know Hank Pym more as like the guy who invented Ultron and all of that stuff. Which of course they're changing for the Avengers.
Exactly, and it's not Hank Pym.
Right, it's just gonna be Tony Stark. But that makes complete sense, and it's like, I know some people get all upset about that, but I'm like, it just makes sense. It's the same thing as sending Wolverine back in Days of Future Past instead of Kitty Pryde, like in the comics. It's like, duh, that's your money. Like this is the central character. Why would you bring in some periphery character that nobody knows about to invent, and it fits his character that he would invent something that gets out of his control. He has hubris, so it actually, you know, secret makes way more sense than Hank Pym doing it, because Hank Pym is always, although he was a pacifist, has always been part of his character, and so he invents Ultron as sort of maybe an alternate solution to things, from what I remember at least. But it makes more sense for it to be a Frankenstein type of thing, a hubris thing, a too much pride thing, and Pym has never been that kind of a character. But I agree with you. It's nice that they have, you know, they're bringing on Lang, and I think in the story, and tell me if you know if I'm off or not, that doesn't Lang try to steal he initially steals the suit, and it's sort of a Les Mis type of storyline where Pym kind of catches him doing that and sort of but sees that he's actually a good person, and then turns him around and like gives him the suit basically and says, look, do something good with your life.
I thought it was more of a Phantom of the Opera reference, or even a Miss Saigon, rather than a Les Mis. I'm totally joking. Props.
I knew you were. I'm like, I'm waiting for where you're gonna go with this though.
But no, this second trailer, I think, clears it up a little bit. That yes, Scott Lang is a thief, just like the comic books. But upon his release, he has gained the attention of Hank Pym, and Hank Pym uses him to steal the suit back.
Oh, that's cool.
That's kind of how I felt it went, because he gives this whole speech of, I can't remember the exact words, but Paul Rudd's like, yeah, I'm going to turn my life around, and I'm not going to break into facilities and steal stuff. What do you need me to do? Cut to Hank Pym. I need you to break into a high security facility and steal something. And it's like, that's hilarious. Way to go. So, but yes,
right.
I don't know exactly, but I felt like it was Hank Pym enlisting Scott Lang to go steal his Ant-Man creation, knowing he's a good person, but he does have this history.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So I don't know. It's sort of, I keep forgetting that's coming out, which maybe is a good thing, because I have a feeling it needs to sort of, to use a pun, fly under the, you know, the radar a little bit here, and then maybe kind of surprise us.
Guardians of the Galaxy did that, where it wasn't,
yeah, good point.
Not much pay attention. Trailers were great, and all of a sudden it's like boom, it was huge.
Yeah, maybe it would be nice to see that, but yet again, Marvel's killing it, you know, and DC's sort of like, where are you?
And I got one more trailer that came out, and they kind of pulled the DC. Terminator Genesis came out on Tuesday. I'm a huge Terminator fan. I really like all the movies. I do think T2 is the best of the franchise and one of the best cinematic movies ever made. I really think that. Well, they came out with a new trailer, and I can't say spoiler alert because they spoiled it themselves. John Connor is a Terminator, and they show it in the trailer. It's like, what are you thinking, folks? Why would you give that away before the movie? That's ridiculous.
They totally could have made that a Darth Vader reveal, you know? I am your father kind of a thing.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is they have something far bigger that they're going to reveal, and they're just like, oh, here you go, so you won't pay attention to this other thing. But I don't have that much faith in, I guess, filmmakers, so I don't think that's the case. I think they just blew it.
That's too bad, because we really, since T2, they haven't really done anything that's any good.
I enjoyed, and I think it's gotten better over time, because I think there was too much anticipation. The Christian Bale Terminator Salvation. I think that movie is really good, and Dark Horse has done some amazing things with that world that they created.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed Rise of the Machines. Again, I think they went from being one of the best movies ever made to we're back to sort of a B-level sci-fi movie, but I was entertained.
Well, and I'm a huge fan of one. I mean, Terminator, I remember watching that as a kid and being frightened. You know, whereas now we watch it, I mean, our society's so desensitized that, you know, it's just a straight up action film. But when I was a kid, like, I was afraid of the Terminator. I mean, this idea that this guy is completely unstoppable, and no matter how big your gun is, it just, like, you know, bounces off of him, and he can be in this huge explosion and all his skin and flesh is melted off, but the skeleton, this metal skeleton, is still coming after you. And there was something about that stop action animation that they used, and that might not even be the right term, but that makes it creepier. than some of the slick CGI that they're able to do now. With the way that he just moved, it reminds me of the old like Sinbad movies and the old Jason and the Argonauts and stuff like that. That there was just something about those the way that the creatures moved, you know, non-realistically and inhuman like, that made them a little bit sort of like, ooh, that's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
So I felt like that. I like Terminator for that, but you know, I'm also just a huge nostalgic doofus, so there's that too.
We're 80s nerds, man.
That's right. That's right.
So what else do we have? That's a lot. That's just this
I
past.
know. I know. That's just this past weekend. We haven't done, you know, one of these in at least 2 months. I don't think this is this maybe our first one for 2015? No, we did one in January.
I think it was beginning of February, end of January, something like that.
Oh man, it's been a long time, that's for certain. Speaking of I guess, you know, part of what we had talked about was kind of catching up on some of the stuff that we've just been doing that's been keeping us busy. But maybe we just don't have time to get into that, and we can get into it later. But gosh, what else has been going on? I mean, comic book wise.
Oh yeah, Convergence. Have you read that?
Well, that's what I was going to go with, was the Convergence and Secret Wars things. And I bought some of the Convergence titles, but I haven't had a chance to sit down and read them yet. And I'm just not all that excited to.
No, I really hate when the companies do this. I mean, if they're going to fight themselves, like Marvel fights DC, like the Amalgam universe, cool. That was fun.
Yeah.
But I really am like, okay, isn't it weird that both companies are rebooting at the same time by destroying all their other dimensions and Elseworlds and all that stuff? Well, once again, a comic book company decides to make a #1, which I read. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, this makes no sense. I don't understand what's going on. Why didn't they set it up? Silly Jimmy, there's a Convergence #0. Why wouldn't they just put that as #1? I realize that in ancient times they created 0, but come on, comic book wise, it should be 1, 2, 3, 4. Go on. So that made me mad because I
one should stand.
Didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, one should stand alone. If you ever do a 0, it should just be sort of like, you know, fleshing out a little bit more of whatever one alludes to, but one should be able to stand alone. So that is frustrating. So I'm not looking for. I guess I better go get 0 because I didn't even buy it either.
Fellow nerds, check out Convergence #0 if you want to know what's going on. So I read 0 and #1. So obviously #2's up. I haven't read any of the individual titles, and I'm not thrilled. I think I'm nervous that they're doing this to wipe out New 52 and sort of start over again, which is mad because Really the only title I watched or read the whole time was Scott Snyder's Batman, which was phenomenal. So if you tell me you're wiping out that history, I'm going to be pissed.
No, I don't think they will. Yeah.
But that's the thing. From what I understand, Convergence is all the characters fighting each other so that essentially you'll have one version of each character in this new world moving forward. I can't imagine they'd pick a different Batman. But what if you decide to pick, I don't know, Thomas Wayne to be the Batman, which they are fighting? And I'm like, no, I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
Yeah, I think there's two things going on here. I think one thing is what you're talking about, that it gives them a way to reboot. And Secret Wars, same. You know, it's the same thing. They're going to do the same thing. It gives them a chance to reboot whatever they want to reboot and keep whatever they want to keep that they feel is working. And it's also a way for us to buy a weekly comic. It's a way for them to maybe get some new readership. And the second thing that I think is going on here is they're drawing on nostalgia, because think about the very first two big comic book like storylines that crossed all the titles of the characters, and it's Secret Wars for Marvel, which were like, they even named it the same thing. And it's oh, now my brain's losing it. It was the whole multiverse thing the first time around, Infinity Crisis.
Yes.
Infinity Crisis, where Supergirl dies, was one of the, that's still on my list of titles to get. I've got to get that one
That
where
was like 0 Hour, Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it's just like, I'm so tired of it.
yeah, that's it. Crisis of Infinite Earths, not whatever I said. Infinite Crisis, that was something else. But yeah, Crisis of Infinite Earths was the first one way back in the 80s. It was around the same time as Secret Wars, I would imagine.
Mm.
The funniest thing, of course, and we've mentioned this before, is Secret Wars was created by Marvel to sell the toys. Like the toy company said, make this comic book series. But it ended up being really cool. And it gave us the black costume Spider-Man, which was, again, I think, to sell another toy. Like, we can sell the same toy and paint it a different color. Let's use Spider-Man and do it. And
But
it's been
also,
one of the
Todd
most famous things.
Amazing Creations.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I made it a mission, since we last talked, to get that issue too. And then I have to just
Man, that's one of my biggest regrets from our comic book store in Brunswick. They were going
yeah.
out of business and they had that, and I totally passed up on it.
Oh, that's tough. Now I got one. It wasn't the greatest of covers condition wise, but I just wanted one so that I could have it. One of these days, I'm going to get these. I want to have some frames where you just sort of like slide the book in, and I want to just have like about half a dozen of them or so, and just depending on what's sort of going on, just slide in different titles into the frames to sort of decorate that part of the the bat cave, as I call the my little man cave hangout. And then it would be so, like, if Guardians of the Galaxy was kind of the thing of the month because the movie's coming out soon and blah 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 or whatever, then I would put some Guardians titles in there. And if Batman Superman's coming out, maybe I put some Batman and Superman titles in there. I had to show you.
Such a hipster.
Hey, easy now, easy. I don't know if that's even more insulting than being called, than when people get upset about being called nerds and geeks and stuff like that, which I have no problem being called that. But hipster, that's crossing the line, sir. That's like being a poser when we were kids. You remember people being like, "Oh, stop being a poser." I think that's the new word for poser now, is hipster. So, had to show you that. I know you saw a picture of it already, but I had to show you that I got this bad boy. And if you don't know, viewers out there, and I'm sure you probably do if you've been watching any of this, but Jimmy hates the cloned Spider-Man. And it was a terrible, terrible series that they wrote.
Let's clarify. I hate the series.
Okay.
I actually love the Scarlet Spider.
Yeah, but then they just what was interesting was that the writers completely changed the story in the middle of writing it because they catered to the fans.
Yeah.
And I guess my comic book guy was telling me that there is a series that they released that was the way that the story was going to be told. So I don't know if you knew about that or not.
I've never heard that because I know
Should ask your guy.
they did it several years later too, where I didn't read this storyline because I'm so tired with the way Marvel talks or deals with Spider-Man, where the kiss or whatever, where Spider-Man had to choose between his life with Mary Jane versus his life with Aunt May, and he chose Aunt May, so basically wiped the slate clean, and he came back as Peter Parker without wife and all that stuff. Well, that's what this was supposed to be with. Peter Parker, the one we knew, was not the real Peter Parker, so he had to leave, and then they could reboot it and start from scratch with all the stories. And fans hated it, which I'm one of them.
Yeah, I think so too. And then I think they made it worse by like changing it up again and like, oh no, never mind, just kidding.
They brought back the Green Goblin who killed off the one clone, and you're like, what in the heck is going on here? This is messed up. And I think the Jackal was the whole problem because he created the clones.
Right.
Maximum clonage.
Right. But that book that I just showed you was, was the start of it all, because that was the first time that there was a clone Spider-Man, and that story is actually pretty cool.
Jackal? Did the Jackal do it?
The Jackal, yeah, the Jackal did do it. Yeah, he's in there, and he's in the issue before it too. And I tell you, man, Spider-Man issues from the late '70s are pretty in high demand, man. Like, because there was a whole bunch of these comics that were just sitting in a grocery bag in the comic book store, and he hadn't had a chance to bag and board them and price them and stuff. And I was just like, hey, you mind if I just look through these and probably take some of them off your hands? So you know, had a ton of Spider-Man and some Daredevil and stuff like that. And so I just was like, he was looking up the prices as I was, you know, putting them on the shelf and considering which ones I was going to actually get and not get. And man, all the Spider-Man stuff was crazy. And if you have any Spider-Man with the Green Goblin on it out there, guys, like hang on to it, because like it could be issue blah blah blah, and then issue the very next issue they might both have the Green Goblin in it, but if Green Goblin's on the cover of this issue, it's like twice as much as the one with this, you know, the same story where he's just not on it in this issue. It was nuts. It was crazy. And the Spider-Man titles from that decade were just way more than anything else from that. It was kind of interesting.
Well, he was definitely the pillar for Marvel.
Yeah, and I think that probably the storytelling around that time was his strongest, you know, in the late 70s, because that's around when Gwen Stacy was killed off too, right? Which was just an earth-shaking storyline. And that was not amongst the ones in the bag, or I would have definitely grabbed that one too. So, but some pretty cool ones. It did have the Origin of Tarantula, though. They did have that one, and it was actually out of what I was willing to spend price-wise.
Wow.
For that guy. Yeah, for the Origin. But I guess the reason is that it's the second cameo of the Punisher. So
that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's why the price was so high on it. And I'm just like, I just kind of wanted it because it had the stupid villain of the tarantula on the cover, but it's not worth that much to me. So, you know, if it was a Batman comic, then I'd have sprung for it. But anyway, we're digressing. Anything else that like was big news wise? Because I think we're on the same page that we're not super excited about Convergence or Secret Wars, but you know, we'll follow along and see what happens out of it. Anything else that you're jumping on?
Not that I can think off the top of my head. I was gonna say we're gonna have to try and meet up again next week to catch up with all the other stuff we're missing.
Yeah, because it's almost like too much to try to catch up on.
Yeah.
To see what's going on. I guess the only other little bit of news that I was excited about, that, well, like disappointed at first and then like kind of okay, good, was that Wonder Woman had departed with their director. And I'm sorry I don't have the names right in front of me. It was a female director that they had parted ways with for creative differences, and that always freaks me out because if a company is and a director are parting ways because of creative differences, it makes me worried, because does that mean that the production company is got their hands into things that they should not have their hands into? Keep it out, you know, let the people who know what they're doing do it.
Especially when it's DC.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And so I was really, you know, asking and hoping that they would get another female director, because I think that they need to do that for female characters. I think having a female director just makes sense. Like, just do it that way. I just feel like that they'll do it. They won't fall into some of the traps that a male director might fall into, even unconsciously, and be more aware of portraying these female characters as strong female characters. And so then the two that are, you know, that are at the forefront of people's attention right now are Captain Marvel and Wonder Woman. And so there was good news that came out about both of those pieces. And from what I heard, is most people thought that the choice for the new Wonder Woman director was a good choice. I think she had done some comedies, though, and so I did see some people being concerned that it was people who had, it was somebody had mentioned, you're going from a director who directed a Game of Thrones episode to somebody who directed episodes of two and a half guys, or what, so I don't know which one it was, two guys and a girl or something, and I was just like, okay, well, are you just being kind of a jerk here, or what's going on?
But if it's this Patty Jenkins, did I just look it up?
Patty Jenkins, that's it.
Okay, so she did Arrested Development and Entourage. Okay.
Oh, that was it. Okay.
She also directed Monster, which is a horrific story of a serial killer.
Yeah, but it won What's-Her-Face an Academy Award.
Yeah, and then she did The Killing and Betrayal,
which I love.
So yeah,
she did some episodes of The Killing. So
I think she's fine.
I think so too. I'm just glad that I think it's what a great opportunity for a female director to break into a genre film it's not very often you see a female director breaking into. And I think that's cool. And especially with Wonder Woman, because she's just that groundbreaking character anyway. And then Captain Marvel, I just love. And I can't remember what the news was about her that was exciting, but it was something else similar, that it was something about, female creatorship being involved. It might have been that it was the woman who who co-wrote the script for Guardians was on board to do Captain Marvel, but I could be misspeaking. I could be incorrect there. But anyway, that was the only other thing that jumped out to me, and I was like, oh yeah, they're doing a Wonder Woman movie. I kind of have forgotten that they're gonna do that. So anything else? Anything else has been up with you?
We're gonna have to do some research. We'll have some more stuff, I'm sure, coming out of the weekend with Star Wars, and then they do have the official release of the trailer for Batman vs Superman IMAX showing on Monday. So maybe something else will come out of that.
Maybe. Yeah, that would be kind of cool. The only thing that, and we'll get back to our segments that we usually do of like recommendations and stuff like that. There was one thing I did want to recommend though, and so if you have something, chime in with yours too. And that has been, and I referenced it earlier, my kids got for me Batman 1966, the TV show, the first full season, and it has just been a joy to watch. And while it was not on TV originally when I was a kid, reruns ran for a little while when I was a kid. It doesn't matter. It's just nostalgic. I just have really enjoyed it for what it is. And it's funny because in high school or in the 90s, I would have hated it because I hate that Batman. It's so campy and I want the dark Batman. And now it's like I've had so much of the dark Batman that this is fun. And I love it for what it is. And I have loved watching it with my kids because they don't realize how campy it is and how purposefully silly it is, as much as they should. But they're getting a huge kick out of it. They just really are. And to see Frank Gorshin as the Riddler and Cesar Romero as the Joker with his ridiculous white painted on, he would refuse to shave his mustache. So they would just put the white makeup over the top of his mustache, and you can totally see it. But the man was so stubborn, he refused to shave his mustache off. So they're just like, okay, we'll just paint over it. And so now it's just a thing. Like any toy replica of that classic Joker has a little, white mustache that you can barely faintly see. But it's been fantastic. So
always Burgess Meredith is the thing.
Oh, he's fantastic. The Penguin is amazing too. And of course, my favorite has always been Catwoman. I just think she's just a lot of fun. But it is quite humorous, and it just makes you wonder, was Adam West and Burt Ward, did they take it seriously? Like, because they do such a good job of selling that they are like Batman and Robin, and they're so intense that it makes you wonder if they thought it was, do they realize how cheesy they are? I think they must have, because there's no way you couldn't. But they are so convincing in their performance of it that it just makes it so enjoyable. I just have loved it. So hopefully people have gotten over the campy Batman and can actually enjoy it for what it is, because I sure do.
Very cool, sir.
All right.
Excellent recommendation.
Thank you. Good family fun.
I agree, and I think that wraps us up for another episode of Two Nerdy Dads. Check us out on the internet, on YouTube, on nerdlocker.com, on Twitter, on Facebook, anywhere else you can possibly imagine. And watch for us coming out soon. We're going to try and do this more regularly as we have in the past. And anything else, Jason?
No, man, but we do promise it will not be another 3 months before we broadcast again. That's the only thing. So have a good one, everybody.